Okay guys, so today, right now, I'm going to show you how to do your bubble maps. If you remember, on Monday, I showed you how to do a bubble map, which is just to break down words from a text and really sort of expand upon what the author or the speaker or the poet might actually mean, because we don't know. I'm not the poet, I'm not the author, but we really have to make our inferences, our educated guesses about what we think in the context of our text the author means. So it says, I'm going to analyze the speaker's description of the flower, and at the bottom you'll see an assertion that answers the question, how does Polanco characterize the flower? So we're going to do analysis here, we're going to do analysis here, and then this is my fill-in-the-blank assertion that I will write after I've done all of my analysis. Now, what you're going to need is to have your annotations open. And if you don't have your annotations open, at least have mine. Remember, it's in the identity folder and it should look just like this. So yesterday you should have watched this, and our flower, that's what I'm doing, is anything in pink. So I don't have that much to pick from when I think of analysis. But if I go back to my bubble map, I've got one that has like a big bubble, and then these have small bubbles. I'm going to do word choice down here. Okay, and then I'm going to do figurative language here. And if I go back to the poem, my figurative language is the metaphor, simile, and imagery, and then the word choice is what I circled. All right, so if I look at this first stanza, stanza 1, it says, let them be as flowers, always watered, fed, guarded, and admired, but harnessed to a pot of dirt. So harnessed to a pot of dirt is a piece of imagery certainly worth analyzing. But let's skip down to stanza number 4. It says, then to be a pleasant smelling flower growing in clusters in the fertile valley where they're praised, handled, and plucked by greedy human hands. So the first thing I'm going to do is I really like the idea of growing in clusters. Okay, so that's the imagery. I've got it labeled imagery that I'm going to analyze. So if I go back to my Kami, I'm going to insert a text box, and you're just going to put it right on top. If you are citing evidence, make sure you use quotation marks. So growing in clusters. Sorry, growing in clusters. So when I think of this imagery, and let's go ahead and label it imagery, just so we know. All right, so growing in clusters. When I think of growing in clusters, I think of maybe it is, there's power in numbers. So numbers, there's lots of them, which to me is sort of a sign of power, but also it makes me think of control and rules, right? Because when you're with people and in groups, there's more often than not rules that you have to follow. All right, so when I think of growing in clusters, I think that there being numbers. Maybe there's lots of them, of the flowers. If there's a lot of them, maybe there's power, and maybe there's rules. I don't know. This is just guesses. When I think of clusters, I think of groups or grouping. When I think of grouping, I think of things like being the same. Like, why do we put people in groups? Because they have similar interests. So similar or the same. But because I think of them being the same or similar, there's a lack of diversity. There's a lack of diversity. Also, when I think of growing in clusters, I think of it being crowded because there are lots of them, right? And because it's crowded, that makes me think of things that are suffocating and makes me uncomfortable. But also when it's crowded, it's hard to see. So it's hard to understand something, hard to see. So my imagery here tells me all of these types of things in the context of my poem. Now down here, I want to use individual words, singular words. Try to use at least 3 words to create a pattern. So if I go back to this, I've got watered, fed, guarded. I've got that. That seems fine. But I've done growing in clusters, and all of my associations more or less seem kind of negative. So I'm going to use the word handled, plucked, and greedy. handled, plucked, and greedy. So I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to do my text box. Handled. And then here I'm going to do plucked. And then greedy. I don't need to identify that it's word choice if it's just a word. But let's go ahead and do our associations. So if I do my things that make me think of, when I think of something that's handled, I think of someone having control. Like, I'm going to take care of business. So I'm going to put control. When I think of handle, I'm going to think of maybe, I mean, if I really think about it, I don't get the vibe that it's handled with care. I mean, not if I pair that with plucked and greedy. So handled, I could also think of maybe like powerful, or I'm just going to put powerful here. Oh, whoops. Let me fix that. Powerful. All right, let's do plucked. Plucked might be easier. So plucked, I can think of snatch. I can also think of to be taken. If I connect the idea of powerful and then to take something, like ownership. But who has the ownership here? Is it the flower? No. It's the people who are controlling the flower. So then if I think about greedy, talks about wanting more, right? Wanting more than what you have. And then if I think of someone who's greedy, they're going to do anything at all costs. They're going to act out for their own self-preservation for whatever it is that they want. So I can think of maybe they can be manipulative. And they're going to manipulate these people to get what they want. And then greedy, I think they're careless. They don't care about the flower. They don't care that it's been plucked or that it's been snatched. Okay, so let's go back up to the top. I've done my associations, and look, there's no right or wrong way to do this as long as you make this make sense. We're trying to make this evidence, these bigger, darker bubbles, make sense to us. So if I go to my drawing tool, I'm going to take the red, and I'm going to circle what I really think he's characterizing the flower as. All right, so it says, how does Polanco characterize the flower? All right, so everyone is the same. Personally, if I go to my bubbles, where do I get my answer? Everyone's the same. I also feel like if I go down here, there is an intense form of control. All right, when I think of, let's see, the greedy, that they're careless with the people in their society. So these are just that's just the way my brain's working right now. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to try to answer this as best I can. This would be my assertion that answers the question. So it's Polanco compares, I'm going to say society, right? Society to flowers. Okay, but why does he do that? Pointing out the controlling nature or the controlling and careless nature of living when everyone wants to be the same, or pointing out the consequences of living in a controlling, oh, there's no O, controlling society, world where everyone is the same. All right, so if I go to my highlighter, I can highlight the words that I've used from my bubble map. So I can do controlling, because I've got controlling, and then everyone is the same is also from my bubble map. So my answer, how does Polanco characterize the flower? Polanco compares society to flowers, pointing out the consequences of living in a controlling world where everyone is the same. All right, that answers the question. Because even though I don't say that they are weak, right, the flowers are weak, it's implied that they're weak. So that's my assertion, and that's really your second introduction to bubble maps. Y'all, this is just a way to help you think. There is not a right way to do this other than make sure that your associations are in the context of the poem. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to open up Schoology and you're going to do your own bubble maps using the same format. I want one thing of figurative language and I want 3 words that go together. But rather than the flower, you're going to analyze the weed. So you'll go back to your annotations and you're going to look at everything in green and you're going to plug in whatever you want as the evidence, make sure there's quotation marks, and then do the bubble map. So then hopefully I can read your answer and see how well it works. All right, so again, this is an introduction to bubble maps. We're going to be doing this all year, so hopefully you get used to it, but it's a way to dive deep. When we start to write, right, when we write essays and things, you'll use these bubble maps to help your commentary. It won't simply sound like summary. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If you've got questions, make sure to email me or send me a message on Schoology. But other than that, happy annotating and happy bubble maps.